So the Cogitarium is in session and we are back. I'm Bev Holden from the Clear Thinking Partnership and I have with me
John Bartlett from Project Libero.
Pete Bryceland from Tipping Point.
And Sarah Rudder from Ginger Dog Development.
Fantastic. So we are here to cogitate on some questions that we hope help us and other people to navigate their way successfully through a global pandemic that has been endless. It feels so far. Our focus for this Cogitarium is spirit, as in we're thinking about a spirit of adventure and how that might help us to deal with COVID. So let's start with a round of appreciation. And I'm not sure what the question is here, other than what joy does adventure bring to us, or what do we appreciate most about having the capacity to be adventurous? Who wants to start us off? And we'll go alphabetically.
I'll start.
Okay.
So the thing I most appreciate about the feeling of adventure and being adventurous is the capacity to do that. I just love the idea that you can take something that potentially could feel humdrum and turn it into an adventure. And so, yeah, I really appreciate that. I think it's great.
Sarah.
What's the joy of adventure? It's about exploration of new places and what that brings, I think. And I think, no, I'll save that other bit of thinking for our conversation. There you go. There's my appreciation.
So I think adventure is laced with a surprise, and I quite like that because you might know the general direction you're going in, but you can be surprised by what you experience along the way. So I like the element of surprise. John, what do you appreciate about adventure?
That it's always in my life. It's one of my key tenets that I live by, is adventure, and whether that be up a mountain or canoeing somewhere, or going out on the bike ride, whatever. There's always an adventure. Even escaping to a book, I'd see a lot of things as adventurous. So it's just always there for me.
Action man. You do. Sorry, you do that thing with your eyes. Was it eagle eye action? No, the one where they go side to side. Eagle eye action man, is he? Yeah, that's the one. Excellent. It's lovely though, isn't it? It's different for each of us. So our question for this Cogitarium is: if we approached COVID with a spirit of adventure, how would it affect our thinking? So if we approached COVID with a spirit of adventure, how would it affect our thinking? Who wants to kick us off? And we'll go around alphabetically. I can start. So during the first lockdown, we did playgroup, and we created a set of cards for clear thinking that were just about COVID, the Corona edit. And two of the words that came up were about being curious and being courageous. And I think both of those things, if we approach things with a sense of adventure, then being curious and being courageous are kind of baked into that. And that's where I would start in terms of fueling my spirit of adventure. But I need those two things to be present. I also need an acceptance that I am going to go on the adventure, that I have to take it on. I kind of have to just go, no, it's okay. I'm not going to shirk my responsibility to be part of this adventure. I am going to step over that threshold and actually embrace it. So that's where I'll start. So John, I think you're next.
So during pandemic, Sarah and I have been, as you know, working with this sort of event we've been running, Field Trip, a free event, and it's been interesting. We've kind of phrased that as a chance to get away from the day-to-day, come on an adventure with us, come on a day out, lots of different activities in the sessions. And it's been interesting how much people have have really bought into the language around that, the kind of escapade, the adventurousness of it. Even though we're on a video conference in those sessions, people have thrived on just that positioning of it being an adventure in learning and a way forward. Even just that framing has helped people to come at the situation differently. And I think some people will rebel against, oh, you can't make it all a big adventure. It's not a big adventure for us. It's not, and we're not diminishing the seriousness of it, and people who've lost family and loved ones and the like. But there's definitely something about how one can almost organize one's thoughts and come with that spirit and that questing nature. And it comes back to things we've been talking about previously, about curiosity as well, about what is round the corner, what else could we do. So that's my initial thinking. Pete?
I agree with most of what you said there. In fact, probably all of it. But in terms of the frame that we put around things, I think the frame that we put around how we're approaching something completely affects how we experience it, and it affects our thinking of it. If we think in terms of how can we be more adventurous, we start thinking in terms of adventure. It's very rare, if somebody says, like, let's plan a celebration, that somebody starts thinking about the negativity aspects of things. It would be really unusual, because it directs that flow of thinking. And I think, again, on this sort of like session of topics that we've talked about being more conscious. And I think that for me is the key now, is making those conscious choices of, okay, we can set the tone for ourselves, and that will affect our thinking. So in the same way that we can sort of like view it as an existential threat and feel like victims, we'll start feeling like victims. Even just saying those words start to emote feelings in the body. And so when we start to think, in the spirit of adventure, how do we cope with this more effectively, it affects our thinking, instantly affects our thinking. And so it is about, we're called Cogitarium, we're talking about fresh thinking, we're talking about how do we affect thinking, and it's about being more conscious, putting that self agenda together of how do I want to experience this. There is no true way of experiencing it. We can experience it however we like. And I think that, for me, knowing that we have that choice, and then thinking, how can I make this more adventurous? How can I make my life more adventurous? Instantly it affects our thinking. You can't help but affect your thinking. So, Sarah.
I'm going to build on that, I think, with some thinking around what are we talking about when we talk about adventure, because I think often people, when they think about this, the concept or idea of adventure, they think of some kind of grand, round the world trip, or something that's very dangerous, or something that's very exciting, or something that's a once in a lifetime thing. And I think, it's Alistair Humphreys, actually, some work that John introduced me to. Alistair Humphreys talks about micro adventures, and that not just thinking about the 9 to 5, but the 5 to 9. So what is it that you do with the time that you're not at your desk, or doing your day job? And I think, if, again, just building on what you were talking about, Pete, if we shift our thinking about adventure and what an adventure might involve or be, or how we might define that, and start looking at the smaller adventures in life, then that can shift our perspective and open up all sorts of opportunities. And I think in many ways, COVID's encouraging that. People who would normally go and have 2 weeks abroad this year as their holiday have had to think differently and come up with other ways of having some time off, you know, people who've never camped before have gone camping this year, and discovered the adventure that's involved in just being, you know, sleeping under canvas, dealing with the weather that the UK throws at you, regardless of whether it's a bank holiday or whatever. People have, particularly in lockdown, you know, we were, you know, had an hour, didn't we, to be outdoors, and I discovered that people were walking paths that around my area where I never normally see people. So for me, that's an adventure, you know, taking a path that you've never walked before, whether literally or figuratively. That's an adventure. It doesn't have to be trekking to the North Pole, or Machu Picchu. Poor lone tourist up Machu Picchu this week. It doesn't have to be that, does it? It could just be, actually, today we're going to go and walk that path and see where it takes us, and we're going to take a picnic. That's adventure. And sometimes that's about putting yourself into the mindset of a 4-year-old, you know, in terms of, and I guess that comes back to your thinking as well, Bev, around curiosity. You know, if I'm curious about the things around me, then that creates adventure for me.
Gosh, so Kate is going to be so pleased that this question's inspired by her, because it's very much her thing, and it's also so helpful to me just thinking about that micro adventure thing. So it'll be half term soon, and I suspect at half term things that we might normally go and do will not be available to us. So there's a real risk of going, what should we do at half term? Don't know, can't do anything, can't go anywhere. And actually the constraints that we're under do create opportunities. It's making me think about street wisdom. So having done that a few years ago in Liverpool, and how it focuses your attention on things you wouldn't normally look at, whether it's patterns or stillness or broken things, whatever it happens to be, just that that gets us out of that lazy thinking and that lazy way of doing things, and helps us find the magical stuff that is under our noses that we're normally missing because we're too busy putting our attention on things that we can't have. So I think this spirit of adventure is a really helpful way of being or thinking. And we can add danger and excitement to a round the world trip of the garden, I'm sure. It just requires us to put the effort in to thinking differently and not letting the easy stuff come to us. We have so much available to us on a plate that it doesn't require us to go out and seek it out. But I think there's more seeking in a good way. You know, we can create more opportunities for ourselves. So what else do people think and want to say?
I'm loving the point we're kind of making the distinction between adventure and what adventure means to different people, and what spirit is in that, because I think that's, you know, a perspective, state of mind, whatever you want to call it. But I'm mindful of, I know we've talked before about the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, and I think what people aren't always aware of is what their threshold is. That idea that you have to step across the threshold. You'll get the call to adventure and you'll need some, you know, a guide and mentor to do that, but then you get this first threshold. Can you step across it? So there's something for me about knowing what it takes, whether it's the backing of friends and family, whether it's your employer being supportive. What is it that's going to get you over that threshold? Or what is it going to make it so compelling that you have to go forward? Now, in a lot of situations recently, people have had to change because that is what COVID has done to them. But if we actually said, you know what, I'm going to see a lot of thresholds and I'm just going to keep stepping across them because I've stepped across one because I had to. Now, what else could I step across? Now, what more could I do? So there's something for me about that. What resources do people need for that? Because, you know, spirit will take you a certain amount, but then people do. It's that bit in Indiana Jones, isn't it, where he steps out and he can't see the stone bridge that's across the gorge, sort of thing, until he has to put his foot out and just go for it and believes, and then he's suddenly walking on it. It's almost that. What do you believe that will get you moving across the threshold? So that's my next thought.
What else? It's all gone quiet over there. What about what's our freshest thinking then? So what are we leaving with that we didn't come with? So what's our freshest thinking on this question of spirit and adventure and how it affects our thinking?
I was just going to offer you one of my favourite quotes. And just John sort of bringing us back to spirit there was reminded me of it. And it's from Life of Pi, if you know the book. And Pi is a young boy that ends up shipwrecked with a tiger in a boat with him. And he finds the sort of survival manual in the lifeboat that they're in, and there's all sorts of very useful stuff in there. But the last point is, don't let your morale flag. Be daunted but not defeated, and remember that the spirit above all else counts. And I think for me, I keep coming back to that because I think that so often I can feel daunted by things, but just remembering that I'm not defeated, and that actually I can keep going, and that this is a tough time. There's no denying that, but we can still find little pockets of adventure and big pockets of adventure. Actually, there's great opportunities for adventure in our world right now, even though it feels smaller, perhaps. And just this sense of actually, do you know what? Yeah, it's tough, but we can still keep going. The spirit is the important thing. And tapping into that each day. So that's my thought for you.
Fab. Pete, how about you? What's your freshest thing?
So I agree with Sarah. I think it is really, I suppose, connecting with our spirit. We're a spirited people. People are spirited. We have spirit within us, and a lot of the narrative at the moment is, that this is all unprecedented. But we get unprecedented things all the time. We've had, just in the last century, had a couple of world wars. We've had the Berlin Wall come down. We've had all sorts of things go on. We've had the existential threat of nuclear war. This is a long line of existential threats that we've faced as a civilization. We're constantly faced with that, and yet we still thrive and we still grow. And I think that's the thing. We've got to accept that the price of living on this planet is existential threats being thrown at us left, right, and center. Even the documentary, my octopus teacher, existential threat every single day in nature. It's just part of our world. But if we approach it with the spirit of adventure and what can I get out of today, there's so much in literature that points to this. It's like carpe diem, seize the day, all those kind of things. We are literally overflowing with that elusive obvious of this is how life should be. We should appreciate that we have an existential threat because it makes life more meaningful. And so what's the adventure we can grasp from it? I think it's it's not a time to be afraid. It's a time to sort of like grasp the nettle and go for it. So that's my freshest thinking.
Thanks, Pete. John, how about you?
Improvise, adapt, overcome. It's a cliche, but the ingenuity of the human spirit, combined, will take us a long way. Whether it be the books of things like Frankl and stuff, Man's Search for Meaning and stuff, but there's I think we're good as a race at finding ways through things, but it requires people to keep kindling that flame, keep that spirit burning. So I think for me, my freshest thinking is my spirit is good, and what else can I do to help other people keep their spirits up and adventurous and going? So yeah, that's my freshest thinking.
So my freshest thinking is just around this whole thing about stepping over the threshold, and how many thresholds can we step over in a day, and keep, and also how we can encourage other people to do that, and know that it's all right. You have that walk of faith that Indiana Jones has, where you can't see it but you can step on it, and that storyline features in so many films and TV programs, and so I say it's just that countdown, that 3, 2, 1, go. and knowing that, well, if I just count down and do it, it'll be okay, because for the most part there's very little jeopardy. The jeopardy exists in our head. It's what we think might happen. It's us trying to predict how we might feel in the future or anticipate the danger and whatever, and for the most part our lives are quite safe. We don't have a huge amount of danger that we put ourselves into. Mountain goats, however, live a very precarious life, because I was looking at some photos yesterday, amazing views, but these mountain goats are clinging by their hooves. They have lots of danger. We are not like mountain goats. Our foundations are fairly solid, so I think it's just keep stepping over those thresholds for me. So we're at the end of our 4th Cogitarium session. The Cogitarium is not only adjourned, it is ended. I feel as though I should have a big gavel. But yeah, that's our fourth think around in this set of Cogitarium conversations. So thank you very much to all of you for helping some fresh thinking and to think together. And maybe we'll be back. Depends on what our fans think. But thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.